In this video, we're going to talk about how to work problems that have different operations in them and that involve integers. So they have positive and negative numbers. And so we have to use something called the order of operations. You've probably heard of it as GEMDAS. That helps us remember the order. But it's the same for integers as it is for positive numbers. So when you worked these in 5th grade, you're following the same order in 6th grade. You just have to also remember your new integer rules that you learned. So let's just quickly review what the order is. The G in GEMDAS stands for grouping symbols. That would be usually parentheses, but you could also see brackets or braces in a problem. And so you would want to work anything inside of those first. But that does not include if there's just a negative number inside them. That's not a problem that you're actually working out. So when we say grouping symbols, we mean some sort of operation that is inside of those. The E stands for exponents. You haven't learned that yet, so you won't be seeing any problems with that yet, but we will learn that in an upcoming unit. Okay, now the next two go together. So it's not multiplication and then division. You'll notice it says multiplication or division, and it says left to right. So the third step in GEMDAS is to see, do you have any multiplication or division? If you do, you work those problems left to right. Don't forget that you're not just going to see the X. You could also see the dot to mean multiplication, or you could also see a number next to a set of parentheses. That also means multiplication. And for division, you might see this division symbol, but you might also see it in fraction form. That's another way of representing division. And then the last step in GEMDAS, again, it's 2 steps, but they're really just 1 step because it's addition or subtraction from left to right. So for that last step, you look and see, do I have any adding or subtracting? If I do, I work them from left to right. Okay, so let's see what this would look like in an integer problem. So we've got this nice long problem. Negative 25 divided by negative 5 minus 3 times negative 4 plus parentheses negative 3 plus 7. Okay, so that can look a little bit overwhelming, but that's why we have GEMDAS to help us. So remember that the G in GEMDAS stands for grouping symbols. And we do have a problem that's inside of some grouping symbols. I always like to underline the part that I'm working on. So for this is the G in GEMDAS. We're working what's in the grouping symbols. And those two have different signs. So remember, when we're adding, we look and see if it's same signs or different signs. It is different signs. So we find the difference, which is 4. We have more positives. So that's going to be a positive 4. You want to rewrite everything else in the problem exactly the same. Don't forget any of the symbols or anything like that. Okay, and remember, we haven't learned exponents yet, so we're not going to be doing any exponents in this problem. So now we're to that next step of multiplying or dividing from left to right. We have multiplication and division in this problem, so we're going to work the division first because it's on the left. Remember that for multiplying and dividing with integers, we have to use a strategy called Dorito Man. So I'm going to draw the Dorito Man over to the side. We've got a negative divided by a negative. So we want to cross off the negative and the other negative. That tells us that this answer is going to be positive. And 25 divided by 5 gives us 5. So it's positive 5. Again, everything else is going to stay exactly the same. So that was our division step. And again, we do have some multiplication in this problem, but we're working it second because we go left to right. And the multiplication is right here. Remember that when that 3 is right next to the parentheses, that means that we are multiplying. So we're going to work our multiplication. So it's 3 times negative 4. And again, we want to make sure we use Dorito Man. So 3 is positive, the 4 is negative. So that's going to come out to a negative answer. And 3 times 4 is 12. I'm going to keep that in parentheses because I don't want to get it mixed up with this minus sign over here. So I rewrote everything else exactly the same. And then remember that the last thing we do is we add and subtract from left to right. So for this step, we're actually going to do the subtraction first because it's on the left. So we'll work this first. And remember that with subtraction, when we see these two symbols right next to each other, that's actually going to turn into a big plus sign. So we're actually adding 5 plus 12, which is 17. And then the last step, all that we have left, is the addition. And so 17 plus 4 gives us 21. Okay, so as long as you use your integer rules and you follow the order of operations, GEMDAS, you will be just fine. But don't try to rush and skip steps. Make sure you're doing every step and following all your Dorito Man rules or your same sign and different sign rules, and you will do just